bit of a weird one, this, because I get the best slot of the day because I haven't prepared anything. It's entirely up to you how successful the next half an hour is, or even if it lasts half an hour. So has anybody got any questions? Or I'll go over the back.
What age did you start cycling?
Well, what age did I start cycling? Well, I think probably like you. I got my first bike when I was about 4 and rode around in the road. And for me, that's the proper start. I rode my first race, when I was 13 years old, and I was pretty rubbish. I wasn't very good at school, at sports or anything else like that. Didn't win anything at sports days in school. Brian Gibson used to win. But I'm not bitter. And I started when I was 13, and I rode a 10-mile time trial, and people used to turn up in cut-off jeans and football shorts and just have a go. And all the results on a piece of A4 paper stuck to a lamppost. My name was right down the bottom. I'm going to do it in 29 minutes and something. And then the next week I went back and it was a bit better and a bit better. And it started like that. So there you go. And how old are you?
How old are you?
9. Oh, you've got a head start there. We're expecting Olympic success by the time you're in your late teens. Yes.
Slightly going off the subject, but
We haven't had a subject yet.
how much backing do you get from local councils and government for cycle safety?
Right, okay, so it's very much something I'm involved with now. So some people may know, some people not. Very different to this part of cycling, but at the risk of sounding a bit melodramatic or cheesy, it's, we were talking about it earlier today, it's just this amazing machine, isn't it, that can be going to the shops or riding Olympic Games or exploring the wilds of Scotland or any combination thereof. Brilliant. We will all be better off when people start using them to go to the shops. And I now work as Cycling and Walking Commissioner in Greater Manchester, and I took the job because Andy Burnham asked me to take the job, and I've just been talking about this as well. I phoned up a guy called Andrew Gilligan, who used to be the Cycling and Walking Commissioner in London, and said, what do I need to ask for? I'll get to an answer in a minute. And he said, you've got to have control of the cash because you need leverage, and it's got to answer to the mayor. So I got back to Andy Burnham and said, Andy, you've got to have control of the cash, and it's got to answer to you. And he went, yep. And I thought, oh, shit. So suddenly, I've been campaigning for something for 15 years, and somebody said, well, go on then. So I was kind of stuck, really. So that's how I ended up in this role. But what an opportunity. A mayor that says, right, we want you to do it, and we will give you, to get started, there's £160 million, and we got to define what the standards were, and so there's 10 boroughs in Manchester, and all the leaders agreed to it, and we set the standards, and it was really simple stuff that was a competent 12-year-old could use it, would want to use it, and their parents would let them. And that proxy is the same. That represents people who haven't ridden since childhood or taken the kids to school. That's one standard, and everybody signed up to that. And for walking, it must be usable and want to be used by a parent pushing a double buggy. And so the support, getting back to the original question, is massive. It's really good, and it's really scary because it's an opportunity. And I genuinely believe that if we can change something on a scale of a city region, which we're on track to do, it will be unignorable at a national level. So it's pretty cool, but I think it's going to take us 4 years before we start to see any kind of fruit. Making space, that's what it takes. And to get somebody out of the car, that's what they need. They need to look out the window and go, oh, that looks pretty good, I'll try that. That means safe space where I want to go, doesn't stop between where I want to go and where I am. So long-winded answer, but as you can probably tell, I'm quite passionate about it.
Thank you.
But it's pretty exciting, and I think we're going to get there. And we're going to get there nationally as well, because not for anything to do with cycling, because the pollution issues that we've got, climate change is becoming a big topic now, unignorable one. Obviously congestion, all of those reasons, that this is the easiest solution, even if you don't like cycling. So I think timing is right.
Time for that is how, I live in a rugby small town, how would you suggest me, without your kind of profile, influence my local council to become more cycling aware? What levers and things have you discovered that work?
I think local council, so I'll give you two pieces of advice. Politicians have made a surprisingly little power because in their, so they can be elected by saying, oh, I'll do these things for you, and you choose, and then you elect them. Then they go off to Westminster. So locally, they can't tell anybody what to do. So they can have a conversation and try to put pressure on, but actually they can't do anything. Nationally, they put their hand up and vote for something, and if they don't vote in line with the rest of the party, then they'll never get a promotion into the cabinet. So it's people don't realise what a difficult position that they're in. They can't do a great deal, but the local councillors have a huge amount of power. They can choose. Now, both of those bodies, if you write to them, which I write into your local body, if they get 6 letters because nobody writes to them, it's a disaster, it's a crisis. So the power to actually influence them is actually quite high. And you tell them that you want it. And the language you choose is really important. So we don't talk about, we don't use the word cycling because it tribalises people. We use a lot of terminology around giving people the choice not to have to drive. Because even people who don't do it, well, quite like the idea of that. You know, enabling kids to be able to ride and walk to school safely, quite like that. So if we were going to do pavement parking, for example, we wouldn't say pavement parking, there'd be absolute uproar. All the little Victorian streets would be uproar. But if you said we're going to put a ticket on any car that doesn't leave enough room for a parent with a pram, everyone would be okay with that. So your language is to include the people that are empty and talk to, you paint a picture really of what's nice. But I know it sounds boring, write to local councillors and local MPs, write to them, and it makes a difference. And the more people you can get to do that, and talk about it in the right way. It shouldn't take bravery to cross a street or ride a bike. Because then that resonates with more than just us. So it's, yeah, that's the only advice I can give you. But political leadership is everything. You know, because we're talking culture change now. We've allowed the car to go for so long and become the dominant force. It uses 80 to 90% of our street space up. And then if it looks like I might obstruct a car, I'm even going to park on your bit, the bit that's left. We've allowed that to become so normal, it's hard to get out of it without political will to have some of those battles. But you can help people to win. First of all, put pressure on them and tell them that this is a vote loser if you don't do it. And I think that's the place to start. I go on and on, but I'm sorry, I'll be here all afternoon. Any more?
When you, just amuse me, when you took the record, how much training information did you actually have at the time?
Which record? I couldn't resist that then. Well, I had an experience back in '92 when I was on the national team and we were all doing pretty okay-ish. And then when Mike Burrows approached me, the guy who designed the original Lotus bike, before it was called the Lotus bike, and said, I've got this car company interested and they want to develop this even further. Will you come and have a look at a wind tunnel? So I went down to Myra, the Motor Institute Research Association, just outside Birmingham. And we went down, and that was my first experience with a wind tunnel. And it's pretty crude because it was made for measuring forces with trucks. So they've sort of adapted this little thing with wires so they could stand a bike on it. So it wasn't as accurate as measuring P's on bathroom scales really, but it was certainly better than nothing, which is what we had so far. And probably the biggest benefit that we had was a guy called Richard Hill, who was an aerodynamicist and didn't know anything about cycling. And I didn't realise until looking backwards through the lens how valuable that ignorance was, because he didn't know what you couldn't do. So we went down there and he said, will you ride in this position? Will you ride in this position? And his colleague, Rudy Toman, who was a test driver, he was a cyclist, said, you can't ask him to do that. And Richard said, why not? Because he didn't know. And because it wasn't the real world, I was happy to experiment because I didn't have to buy it. You know, I wasn't signing the dotted line. We were just trying it out. And then I saw the numbers changing massively and realised how important it was. So then had the motivation to go and train to ride in a different position. So that whole exercise, it was that piece of knowledge about position, even though the pictures are of the bike and the pointy helmet was all futuristic and looked great, that was actually the big performance changer, was riding position. So just purely by chance, really, often how these things work, I bumped into that information. And then I worked with a guy called Peter Keane, a sports scientist, who's responsible for a lot of success. He was the architect of British cycling, that probably a lot of people now don't even know. A very smart guy who was fascinated by how things worked, as opposed, and he wasn't really interested in winning and losing. He was just fascinated by how they work, and oh, if we did this, we'd go a bit faster. Train like this, you'd go a bit faster, and that was infectious. So to sort of wrap that up, I suppose I had a lot of this stuff. And I've been asked several times over the years, oh, imagine, what would you have done if you'd had this now? And I don't think we would have massively gained, and it was interesting to be involved in it while it was forming. And we used to do things very Heath Robinson, and we made masses of mistakes as well that didn't get as widely publicised. And have those experiences. This place, I would have absolutely loved it, because getting somebody fascinated with the journey rather than the destination is a really healthy place to be. And getting athletes, so I mean the What Bike guys, the first people for years that have let go of the history of an event and started just to look at the demands. They've got some knowledge in there with an engineer in Dan Bigham, who's an aerodynamicist who knows what's in the way, and done everything they can to optimise their performance. And unsurprisingly go very fast. And I think it's changed a lot now. We can see since I rode a bike just how many people are going fast, not just one or two individuals across the board, and nobody is more powerful. Powers haven't changed in the past 25 years, but the efficiency has changed because of knowledge. And you can definitely see that. I mean, that's just a fortuitous picture that James has used for this stand here, that John Archibald set the fastest time ever at sea level this week with a 4.9 pursuit. So, and that's because of knowledge as much as it is because of physiology. I can't remember what the question was now. I went off. Sorry, yeah.
How clean do you think pro cycling is today? And if not that clean, then what do you think we need to do to make it cleaner?
Well, interestingly, I think last week cycling was now ranked 13, wasn't it? It was there was 12 other sports that are less clean than cycling. Oh, that sounds awful, doesn't it? But basically, cycling's a lot better than it has been. It's in great shape. Who knows, to be honest? But I like to think that what I'm witnessing now, it looks believable. And it looks authentic and it's consistent. We're not seeing somebody who performs here but not here. And we've got more measures in place than any other sport. And because it was highlighted back in the 90s, and it was, we've done a huge amount. I think it's in good shape, to be honest. And more importantly, I think culturally it's becoming less accepted. So it's a battle that you're always going to have to fight and stay on top of. What I see on television, I enjoy it and I choose to believe it. I think that's the difficulty, is what we found is we thought we believed something and then somebody proved that actually, Lance Armstrong, I'm going to go back that far, the fairy tale wasn't true, and so like we feel cheated and we're not quite sure now. But so it comes down to you have to choose what you believe, and what I'm seeing at the moment looks pretty damn good. And I enjoy watching the sport, and I think that confidence takes a long time to restore, and it is taking time. But I mean, I remember when we're commentating on the tour, every year we're just hoping there isn't going to be a doping story, and then there was, and then oh, there's a year where there isn't, there's another year where there isn't, and now it's normal for there not to be, which is got to be a good thing. Yeah.
If you were to do a charity tandem ride from Land's End to Giants, who would you take on that one?
I hate questions like that. You kind of expect expected to say something further. Apart from the fact that I wouldn't do it in the first place.
Well,
Absolutely wouldn't do it in the first place. I think I'd have to go for somebody who's completely got nothing to do with cycling.
yeah, that's right.
Who's just, who has a different take on it. And I've been involved only slightly off to the side, but just because I was talking about this earlier. Dave Gorman, the comedian, did a tour around the UK a few years ago, and he went to all the venues by bike, up and down the country and across the country. And one night it would be in the O2 Arena, and another night it would be in Threlkeld Village Hall in the Lakes, and the Vicar's doing the sound. And I know that because I was actually at that one. And he rode between them all, and seeing somebody new discover how great bikes are is just great fun to be around. Plus being a comedian would be particularly helpful as well. In fact, you can get both if you use John Bishop, because John Bishop rides a bike as well, so that'd be absolutely perfect. John Bishop came and visited the tour about 4 years ago when we were working on it, and he came and did a bit for ITV, and he sort of hung out with us. And he went to see, actually no, it was quite a few years ago, it was the year Bradley won, and they bumped into the VIP bit, we got through the fence, and I think they were like enjoyed it all the more because they'd like managed to beat the man and got in. But he said we were all at the front with glasses of champagne going, Brad, Brad, Brad. And then they got bounced and thrown out, which I think just iced the whole thing for them, you know. It was a great day out. So John Bishop, I think, there you go. I got there in the end. Yeah.
So is Gary going to miss you? And what are your plans for broadcasting? Are you going to do the track coverage? Or?
Yeah, it was, I don't know if anybody saw the tour last year, and the stage to Mond, climbing Mond. It was actually there, I decided, I was on the phone to my wife, we've been talking about it for years. Particularly this job in Manchester, there's so much going on, and then all of July is gone. And my son Oscar is 23, and I've been at home for 3 of his birthdays because it's in July and I'm always away. And I just decided that something's got to give, and I'm in a wonderful position of having lots of great and interesting things to do, and there's too many of them. Something's got to give. So while I was sitting in a deck chair in Mond, I thought, right, it's got to be this. And I told Gary actually, as he was just walking back from the set, and it was very touching. He was, you probably need to know Gary, but he's a lovely bloke, and yeah, it was quite touching. I was quite surprised actually, and quite humbled that people were bothered. But it's a group of people that you squabble and fight and you bicker and all the way around France, and you walk out and walk back in, but you all end up back the same year, the same people doing it again. And it's a big piece of my adult life, so I'm really going to miss it. I just couldn't do everything. And I think it's time for a change for that programme as well. I think we get comfortable with it, but it's time for something different. Remember, not that I'm comparing myself to this in any way, but I remember we were watching the Bake Off. We used to watch Bake Off with the kids, but still do. And when they stopped doing it on the BBC, and Belle and Sue wouldn't go, it was absolutely outrageous. And then we watched Sandy Toshvig and what's his name, Noel, and we went, oh, actually this is better. You know, and everyone was in uproar, this institution, and you've ruined it. You know, this is better. And I think that programme will go on, and I think some things just got to change, and it had to change for me personally. So I'm going to miss it. I'm still doing the BBC stuff because it's in more manageable chunks that I can put other work around it. And I only do both of them because we just have a laugh. You know, we watch bike racing, which can be brilliant, and then we go for a curry. And if we didn't enjoy it, I'd do something else. Yeah, so just that for now, but we'll see. Yes.
Any comment on this latest hot news on this Derby team, the amateurs versus the pros?
Those guys. Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah.
It was just, I've only just become aware of it, but there was one comment that drew my attention. They criticised because they said, oh, we hadn't had support. So I just wondered what comments you'd make on that. You know.
Well, working in and around the media, then everybody will quite happily take things that you say out of context and use it because it sounds a great little sound bite. And a lot of those guys are already on the national team, so you know the support is there. Not all of them, but I think in the round, I don't know. Probably a lot of you are familiar with this group, but basically it was a group of guys who got together who wanted to do things their own way. And some of them were on the national squad, most of them weren't, and they thought we could do something. They understood aerodynamics, which as I was talking about before, and I'm pointing over there because obviously that's one of them. And they looked at the demands of the event rather than the history, and rather than go and try to find 4 athletes who could all do a lap on the front each turns, they went, well, what have we got to play with? Well, you're rubbish endurance, so you do the first kilometre, and you don't do anything and just do the last kilometre. And they just changed the way the event was written. And I was commentating when I first saw it. It was on BBC, and I watched the way that they were riding it, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely head-slappingly brilliant. That why would you not do that? Why would you not use each individual's best abilities and stitch it together? It's very high risk, but absolutely fantastic when somebody finds another way in something that's so traditional, has been done one way for decades, and then you find another way through. They're great, that innovation. And I think the establishment is uncomfortable with, and I was sort of hoping that they'd go, brilliant. But you've got coaches and athletes there that have done the whole blood, sweat and tears thing. And then somebody come along and done it a different way. You're going to feel, to a degree, threatened by that. But that's good. That uncomfortableness is what changes. And I think the British team will be doing more riding of that style.
But they won't automatically become the leading British team.
No, it also has to be said that they're not the fastest. You go to a World Cup, and they've won a World Cup here, and they've done some very, very respectable times, but the actual fastest times are still from national teams. So once you get boiled down to Olympics and Worlds, they wouldn't be winning. I think that maybe they could in the future, but they also brought, Lambie, they brought somebody in from America to sort of backfill because they're a trade team that can do that, so it isn't all nationals all the time. But there's definitely some thinking there. I was more interested in who came up with those strategies when you finish riding the bike. That they should be the coaches and sports scientists of the future, because clearly they got the most out of 4 individuals. So I was more interested in how they got there rather than what they did. If you know what I mean. Yes, any more? Going to come to a natural death. Not quite. Just throw it in.
I got into time trialing last season. I used to be a cross-country runner, and I'm highly addicted to it. I'm aiming to use your facilities this year, and then next year I'm aiming to go to the UCI Grand Final World Championships time trialing. What piece of advice would you give to somebody from your unbelievable background?
You can just distill it down to a sentence.
Just one thing that I can take away, even if I'm having a bad day or had a bad race, what bit of advice?
Well, the biggest change that I got is that, so I'll have to context it slightly, so I know it sounds a bit weird to start with, but I'll get there. So when I was at school, I'm sure I was quite bullied, but I certainly left with low self-esteem, low self-confidence, wasn't good at anything. So when I found something in riding a bike that I was good at, the result meant a lot to me, and my personal worth was tied up in the result, and that's not a healthy place to be for a kid. So I used to ride this emotional roller coaster until I bumped into the guy that I mentioned, Peter Keane. And Peter Keane was fascinated by how things worked. So when I bumped into him, and I'd completely skipped academia, so I'm academically barren, but I bumped into, for a lot of people this might be standard process, but he sort of looked at a result, looked at things within it he could do better, came up with a new idea, like an experiment, a concept, based on evidence, and then we'd go again. And because of that bit there, that explanation, I go, I can see what you mean there, I'm interested. I got fascinated too with the journey rather than the destination, the process. And then we did a race, and it would go well, and we'd go, wow, what did we learn from that? Pull it apart. Or, wow, that wasn't what we expected. What happened? And then we come up with another one. So in the round, being fascinated with how things work rather than whether you win or lose is a lot more rewarding, I think. So every time you go out, find out, just have a plan of what you want to do, why you think it's going to work, and then spend a bit of time. It's got some terms like reflective practice and things like that now. What was good, what was bad, what would you do differently? And that bit is where the real winners always succeed. Just to go slightly sideways, I did some work with Bob Skeleton team, coaching a coach actually, Lizzie Arnold's coach, a few years ago. And I remember they came through the door, the athletes, and there was one in particular, one lad who said, I give everything for this, I'm utterly committed. Just tell me what to do and I'm there. And it was like, right, okay. And then Lizzie Arnold came in for a debrief session, and we'd been to the track that morning, and she went, right, this is what we did, and I really cocked that up, so I think I'm going to do this differently next time. And then she came out with a plan. So she looked at the performance, worked out what she was going to do differently, and then asked for comments from the coaches. And I just sat there and thought, well, nothing I can do to help you. That's bang on. But the lad was a lovely bloke, didn't go anywhere because he was waiting for somebody to give him the magic answer, where she was going to find her own, and she was fascinated by how it worked and how to be different. So get fascinated with the journey rather than the destination. Enjoy doing something new. Have an idea, go out and try it, and have somebody to bounce ideas off if you can, and then rip it apart and see what you can do differently. I stopped my career when we were in a room, a debrief session for a whole year, and I realised we were talking about trying to do the same thing again. So other people didn't believe it could go any quicker, and I didn't believe it could go any quicker, and that was the end of my career, and it was going to work from that point on. So that fascination is huge. Take something out of it, maybe. Yeah.
Have you had a best day and a worst day in the seven?
Well, I think we've all had those. It recalibrates, doesn't it? Depend where you're standing when you look at it. I think the best day for me, I mean, the hour record, the 56k one was the lowest pressure day, best fitness of my life, perfect technology for the job. Everything came together, and there's not many things I can look back at, because I used to do that a lot, where I can't think of anything I could have done differently there. That was probably one of them. Most satisfying was the final hour record, because the last thing I ever did was break what was called at the time the athlete's hour record. So bike like Eddie Merckx, standard position. We thought we'd go after the great Eddie Merckx's distance, and I actually managed it by 10 metres, which is about 0.2 of a second after 1 hour of riding, and that was it. That was the end of my career. It could have easily gone the other way. Just been right, thanks for coming. Shuffled sideways out in the velodrome. So I was very lucky to get away with that. That was pretty cool. And the worst was probably 97, Tour de France, stage 16, stage to Pamplona, and it was over 260 kilometres, and I was absolutely knackered. And after 5 kilometres, with seven climbs to go, big mountain passes, I was out the back, and I thought, that's it. I'm not going to get. I'm almost to Paris, and I'm not going to be able to make it. And we got over the top of the climb, and I managed to just get back into the rear of the peloton, and then got spat out the back again immediately. And it was absolutely horrific. That bit, this was the last hard stage of the tour, and I'm that close to making it to Paris. I'm not going to be able to do it. And I managed to just get into what we used to call the laughing group, ironically. And it's the group of people that have all been dropped and look after each other. And we managed to, 8.5 hours later, we got across the finish line inside the time limit. And that was the most unpleasant experience I've ever had on the bicycle. But, yeah, I would have that. I think they're the kind of things you've only got one in you, and that was it for me. I would never do that again.
You did swear you'd never ride was it the Lotus again or something?
Oh, I've sworn lots of things. There's a big list of those. I'll never do that again. Yeah.
So you're fairly busy now. How often do you get to ride now? What kind of riding do you like to do?
At the moment, I'm running. I'm mostly running, nearly all off-road, because I just enjoy the simplicity of it where I live, and I can slot it in around work, and I can stay reasonably healthy doing that. and I pick up the sportive, so I'm doing Velo Birmingham in a few months' time, and one or two other things. Used to do a tap pit lottery, which a tap Caledonia, sorry, in pit lottery, talking about this morning. So those kind of things I enjoy doing, and most of my riding is tracks and paths and exploring. So because I live on a peninsula, after the first 30 years or so, it starts to get a bit samey. So most of mine is done when I go somewhere else. So I spent Christmas in Scotland, spent about 2 months a year up in the Highlands around the Cairngorm area, and the bike is just a brilliant way to explore. Just go out and explore and take photographs. I take a lot of photographs now. And I found myself on the west coast of Scotland last year, and the bike is just a way to go and explore further than you can on foot. To go out for hours and just not see other people, and if you do see somebody, you wave because it's another human being, and that's quite innate. I love that. So it's just a different thing to me now. I tend to go out on my own a lot because I can fit it in around what I'm doing. So yeah, they're my kind of things. So I use one of the adventure bikes, what I use, big fat tyres, so I don't care about speed anymore, which is still a novelty. I enjoy that. Yes?
Who do you think will win the Tour this year out of Geraint and Froome?
Tour de France, I think people would like to see Geraint Thomas win. I think he's certainly making it interesting. It's taken him a long time to realise that he can win rather than support. He's always been somebody who's put himself in the service of other people. Straight away, you know, if there's a sacrifice to be made, he's like, oh, I'll do it, you know, puts his hand up. But at last, he found out that he's capable, and he's given him confidence. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the year develops. Year after winning is tough because some of that hunger is taken away, and you have a lot of things that you have to do that you didn't have to do before, so you lose a bit of focus. So it'll be interesting to see how he deals with that. I personally think it'll be Chris Froome, who's had the experience of losing the one event that means something to him, and that's really going to have hurt him. So that's going to rekindle his enthusiasm, and I think it's going to be interesting. But I would still back Chris Froome. Yeah.
You mentioned about Merck's hour record actually. I wonder if you guys ever speculate, like, how good do you think Merck's was? How would you do if you popped in on the Performance Centre? Do you ever speculate about like Merck's or Cancellara or anyone else that they think?
Well, the answer is no, but I will now. I think you'll find, my guess would be that if you physiology tested Merck's now, it'd be the same level as the best people now. And I mentioned it briefly before, that people have got more efficient, but they haven't really got much more powerful. I think there's a little bit of physiology difference in that we understand training better now. We understand what works, so we don't do so much junk miles. I think if you got Merck's and trained him as you train somebody now, and given him the technical advice that's available now, he'd be just as competitive, because it's more about the personality as it is about physiology. The only thing he really suffered from, I think, he was a big bloke, and that's really working against you now when people can get really small.
More than a specialist classics and stuff these days rather than that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can do. Sometimes you just get someone who's a little bit ahead of the game. So I think I was lucky to have those experiences I had, and I kind of got a 10-year head start, and I managed to milk it and be able to win some time trials and things. So that was great. But everybody's caught that up now and well surpassed it, and so you're getting loads of people in national time trials and on the track going a lot faster than I did, because I was no better physically, but now they're more advanced technologically as well as being probably better physically. So I think if you took any athlete from any year, I mean, the point of doing the athlete's hour record was to try and distill just the athlete. So you could look at something and say, right, 30 years in the past, or 30 years in the future, the only thing that's changing is the person. And I thought that was a great concept. And it was actually a private exercise to start with that the UCI adopted, but we were going to do it anyway. We were just doing it as an event, and the UCI decided to adopt it. But I still think there's merit in that, stripping out all the technology. And it was kind of a nice way to tidy up after having been one of the people that really pushed the technological limits as well. Yeah?
Speaking about these, anyone give anything to bring up
Sorry, I'm a bit
Oh, sorry,
deaf.
I was just saying, speaking about the UCI, it's quite boring, but someone else brought it up, so thanks. Do you reckon that with the likes of kind of some of these newer guys coming through now, and a lot of the kind of technological advancements around going fast, do you think the UCI are now looking to maybe expand the rules and maybe drop some of that stuff, or do you reckon there's now going to be a little bit more close eye on it, maybe more stringent rules?
I think the UCI, I mean, technology is an interesting part of the sport and it adds some value to the watching. And all you want to be sure of is somebody can't buy success, really, aren't you? So I think some things they're over-regulating and just say, okay, well, being clever is a thing. And if an athlete being clever and being smarter and more efficient helps them win, then great, everyone else will catch up. And they have, you know, certainly with the British team, we had an advantage for like 3 Olympic Games in a row before everybody's going, do you know what, I think maybe we should go and win tournament. You know, and it takes a long time, but I think in some areas they over-regulate, so the stuff they've just done on clothing, I won't get too geeky on this, but they've basically just said you can have material and it can't, nothing higher than 1 millimetre and no intervention, it's got to be part of the week. So it's actually quite a good regulation. But where they're trying to get into, they're trying to control bike prices now, and that's a really dangerous area for them to get into. And they shouldn't go there. Let market forces work that around, I think. Right, well, I think we'll probably draw that to a close then. But thank you very much for the questions. I hope you had an interesting day. It's great fun for us. We've got some brilliant experts that work here. They're the most important bit of the building. All the techie bits and the equipment is great, but that knowledge is the bit that we want to sell, or I'd like to sell more than bicycles. Preferably, I'd like to sell you both. It took the best part of a decade to get this place going, and I'm delighted that people are enjoying it. So, thanks very much for coming. Cheers.
Thank you.